Welcome to the Game Changers family. I talk to the Game Changers, the ones who the game was changed on, yet they triumph. It's Game Changers with me, Lisa Faulkner. I'm your host. Hello, everybody, and thanks so much for joining us for another show of Game Changers with me, Lisa Faulkner. I'm your host. I love when you join us because I know that you are joining us for something special. You're joining us to hear from the wonderful Game Changers that we bring you each week. I come here each week to hear from these wonderful Game Changers as well. Today, to this week, is no different. I've got one on tap that I know you're going to enjoy. I can't wait to get him to you, but before I do, I just want to tell you how excited I am that Game Changers with Lisa Faulkner is still with you, still bringing you these great shows. I want you to be able to get the show any way that you have come accustomed to getting the show, so don't forget to tune in to the podcast any way that you want to listen to the show. It's always available to you on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play Music. Continue to tune in to the podcast, subscribe there, and leave us your ratings and reviews. We love it when you listen to the show any way you want. You can also get it on radio. Continue to listen. But right here on Preach the Word Network, we love that you're tuned in here this week as well. Hey guys, Game Changers on social media network. I want you to follow me there as well. I love it when you connect with me. You know, people ask me all the time, where do you find these great people? Where do you find all these great Game Changers? Well, they come to me, I come to them, but I love it when you connect with me on social media because it keeps me connected with all of these great Game Changers out there as well. So Lisa M. Faulkner on Facebook, Lisa Faulkner on LinkedIn, at Penstar Lisa on Twitter, and at Penstar Lisa on Instagram as well. Connect with me and I will connect right back with you. Love it when you stay in touch with me. You have questions for me, send them to me at Lisa Faulkner at Penstar Lisa, and I will answer your questions right here on the show. We have a question coming up on the show I'm going to answer for you, and the second, after the break during the show, I'm going to bring my guest on first, and I'm going to give him an opportunity to answer it with me, talk back with you. I told you when I sometimes want to bring the guest in and allow them an opportunity to answer the questions with me because they're great Game Changers, and I know that you want to hear from them as well. So without any further delay, let's just dive into the show. I want to tell you about this great Game Changer that's with me this show, and I don't want to delay anymore. Let's get started. I want to tell you a little bit about him so that we can get started here today. He comes to us from law enforcement. He is the founder and CEO of the 12 Project. It is an organization dedicated to empowering and educating the world on the effects of abuse and trauma. Having spent 20 years as a law enforcement agent and 12 years as a detective, he is also a resourceful and insightful and savvy devotee to children abused and traumatized. With that, I want to dive right into what a hearty welcome to Game Changers with Lisa Faulkner, Mr. Kevin Mcneil.
Thank you, Lisa, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
My
Thank you so
sincere
much.
pleasure.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming out, Kevin.
Yes,
wow.
thank you.
What a worthy cause
Yes,
you
ma'am.
have chosen to champion.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
First, tell us, what is the 12 Project? First, tell us why 12.
Okay.
That's unique in
Yeah.
itself.
Okay.
And what exactly is the 12 Project?
Well, the 12 Project has the number 12 has numerous metaphors and meanings.
I bet it
Yeah,
does.
so the first meaning is at the age of 12, I was walking home from school one day, and I was kidnapped and raped by a man that I didn't know.
Wow.
And once he was done sexually assaulting me, he got me on the ground, started choking me, and tried to kill me. And I had to fight that man off and had to run all the way home. And I was at 12 at the time, and I never told anyone. And when my mom asked me what happened, because I showed up at home with no shirt, no shoes, tattoos, blood and mud. And she asked me what happened. I lied and told her I was robbed because I was too embarrassed as a male to admit that I had been raped or sexual assaulted by another male.
Wow.
So that's the first 12. And the second 12 is scripture based. It comes from Matthew 10:1 and 2, where it says Jesus summoned the disciples and he gave them power to heal abusive spirits and to deliver people from trauma. And so that's the second part. And also the third part, I was a detective for 12 years. And so the organization, the goal is to transform the culture in the next 12 years. Because 12 means restoration, stands for justice. That's why Jesus has 12 disciples. That's 12 tribes of Israel. That's 12 months in a year, 12 hours in a day, 12 people sit on a jury. So it stands for justice. And so that's where all that meaning comes in the 12 Project.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
Kevin.
Yeah.
Let's just stop right there, y'all. You see what I mean by game changers. You see these people, Kevin, that stops everything right there when you go
ma'am.
and tell your story.
Yes.
See, I know how to pick them, guys. When I tell you I am bringing you the best of game changers, I am bringing you the best of game changers.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't take your story lightly.
Yes.
The first 12 is very sobering.
Yes, ma'am.
And you hold that because you know
Yes.
that's going to part the waters.
Oh yes, that's the story that I use. I travel all around the country telling my story, do keynote addresses. The organization also educates. We educate the public on the effects of abuse, the trauma, and I've done research and I have books out about the neurological effects on trauma and how it affects behavior.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So a lot of times what happens is I was a police officer. So as a detective, I saw that I was so busy locking people up that I wasn't busy helping people who were suffering from these effects of abuse. So I always use the term, I was so busy doing detention, you know, the root word tent, right? Where people were pent up in their emotions and they were acting it out because we create how we communicate, right? And so then I wanted to do prevention and intervention. And if you look at both of those words, the root word of both those is vent, right? Prevention and intervention, giving people space to talk about what happened to them allows them to actually deal with it in a constructive way.
This is a lot of good information you're giving us, Kevin. I am still on how does a 12-year-old recover from what you told us happened to you. Then you told us you create how you communicate.
Yes.
And then you told us a third part about the vents.
Yes.
But I want to talk about.
Okay.
Oh boy. Oh boy. You know you're creating another show for us
I
here,
got
Kevin.
you. I got you. Okay.
I want to talk about how does a 12-year-old
Yeah.
get through that type of trauma.
Yeah.
And I would imagine it's not easy.
It's
and
not.
that's why you have created the 12 Project.
It is. It is.
Because you know it was just clearly by the grace of God
Definitely.
that you were able to get through it.
Oh yes, and that's the only reason I tell people I was able to get off the ground, that God enabled me was to spread the message. And as 12, one of the ways, it goes back to the neurological effects of abuse, I numbed it out. I blocked it out.
That happens when you're traumatized that way in childhood.
Yep.
You have to suppress those
You have
things to
to,
get through it. Because you don't know, you don't have the wherewithal, you don't have the understanding that if I share this with the people in my life who love me, you don't know that they're going to cover you.
Nope.
You don't know enough to know that they're going to protect you. And then sometimes you're traumatized in those ways and they're a part of the trauma.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Now, speak to that.
Because
those
again,
children, those people that are supposed to love them,
Yes.
they are the people that traumatize them are a part of the trauma.
Exactly.
I think you
Oh, yeah.
probably encounter that a lot
Oh,
with children.
definitely. That's one of the things that I didn't want to tell because part of Education 12 Project is helping the public and law enforcement because a lot of law enforcement, I did it myself as a detective, we re-traumatize the victim because we don't know what they're going through and we put them in situations where, and I always tell people, I use an analogy, you know, people cringe when I say this. If I tell you to disclose your last consensual sexual encounter in front of a room full of people, would you be willing to do it? And don't tell every detail. But that's what we ask trauma victims to do. And here's another thing I tell people. The abuse victim is the only victim that has to prove that they're a victim, right? A gunshot victim doesn't have to prove that they were shot.
It's evident.
Yeah. A burglary victim doesn't have to prove that their business or home was burglarized. But an abuse victim, the moment they say something happened to me, We telling you to
And
prove
that takes
it.
them all the way back through the trauma.
Exactly. They re-traumatize, and it has a lot to do with the brain. And here's the big thing: it has a lot to do with behavior, because the brain, you create what you communicate, right? So if I'm
You
communicating to
create what
myself,
you communicate.
and the Bible tells us that in Genesis, God spoke and created.
That's right.
And
That's
so
right.
when I'm speaking to myself saying I'm not valuable, I'm not good enough, I start creating a world to match what I'm communicating to
Wow,
myself.
Kevin.
And it also determines how I communicate with others. So a lot of the violence we're seeing in our culture and our communities is this tent up, the tension
Yes,
of this pain and
yes,
trauma.
yes.
And we have not created a space
Yes.
for people to vent
Wow,
what happened to them.
Kevin.
So that happened with me as a young boy. You asked how I
Sure.
got over it at 12.
You don't.
My behavior started changing. And sports saved me because my coach almost came like a foster parent to me. Right? So it was that intervention. I had somebody to talk to. There was that venting, not necessarily what happened to me, but things that were surrounding what happened to me, like my inability to communicate properly, my shame, my guilt. And so I was able to communicate that, and that helped me to actually curb some of the behaviors that I was having, because I was still acting out, sexual behaviors, anger, all those behaviors, fighting, skipping school, because I was communicating, or the trauma was communicating to me I wasn't good enough, I was damaged, that the body that I was carrying was no longer any good. So I didn't care what I did with it. Right? I didn't care. And so image became a big part of my life. Like, how do I look? And I stayed away from people. I hid myself in a way.
God bless you.
Yes, ma'am.
God bless the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Oh my goodness.
Thank you.
Tell us more about the 12 Project. What
Yes.
kind of people do you talk to? What is the ultimate goal? What are the
Okay.
tenets of the 12 Project?
Okay.
Tell us how we can get involved.
Yes, the 12 Project, our goal is to educate, facilitate, and motivate. Educate the world on abuse, facilitate conversations around abuse, and motivate people to stop abuse. And so what our goal is to go into every stratosphere, whether it be the public, the judicial system, the churches, and teach people about these effects. What I went through as a child, what ended up being a constructive way through sports, a lot of the times is destructive. Violence, people act out, sexual behavior. So a lot of what we're seeing is this pent up trauma. The kids can't communicate, they can't vent, and so they found alternative ways to communicate their pain. And so what the 12 Project does, we make it available to schools. We go out, and right now I got a program that's called the Guardians. And what that is I'm teaching young kids and helping them research the effects of abuse. So I'm letting them determine what type of future they're going to create for themselves. And so they're the guardians, and guardians is spelled like the garden in the Bible, Gardians. And so they're responsible. It reminds us our goal is to guard the earth, not to destroy it, and to guard people and not to destroy them. So the 12 Project plays a big role in that.
Wow, that's inspiring.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's very inspiring. We're going to get ready to take a break. I think that is enough to hold you all through the break. I do not think you are going to want to leave this gentleman. I know that I do not. I am just full of game-changing questions to bring him back for the next half hour, the next part of the half hour. If you all will please stay with us, we will be right back. Do you need someone with solid, expert communications experience to write your copy or your next press release? Then you need PenStar Communications. Let PenStar communicate your greatest potential with clear copy written for your business and marketing needs. Whether it's your next event or next campaign, PenStar Communications can write that for you. Visit penstar.org or call 404-828-0287 today. Well, we are back with Mr. Kevin Mcneil of the 12 Project. Kevin spent most of his career as a decorated detective. I call him a decorated detective because he received very many recognitions, very well noted throughout his career, and then has now gone on to be a public speaker and serves to curb abuse throughout communities and stop the trauma and abuse that happens with children in the community. Now, Kevin, you talk about creating an atmosphere that prevents child
Yes.
abuse. That's interesting to
Yes.
me, because how do you do that? Because if abuse is going to happen, it seems it's going to happen because it seems innate in some people, like the abuse you talked about that happened with you.
Yes.
How do you stop someone that is prone to doing that to people?
That's a great question. I think education, Nelson Mandela said education is the greatest tool you can use to transform the world. And I think when you start educating the public about what happens, some of the signs, some of the things that happen, and a lot of times people have this thing, abusers abuse people, right? That's a very small percentage of people who do that, but all abusers participate in some form of abuse, whether it be opioid abuse, whether it be sexual abuse on themselves, whether it be suicide, because they internalize the trauma. And when I internalize, I abuse myself, but when I externalize it, I actually cause violence to others. So we have this old saying, you always hear, what happens in this house stays in this house.
Yes.
But that's not true. What happens in the house goes out into the community.
It
It gets
does.
communicated, and therefore it gets created. Trauma begins to speak. So a lot of what we're saying, so we're going to curtail, we got to create atmosphere where it's okay to talk about it.
Yes.
It's okay to say, and I've written books about how do you have that conversation with your children that tell what's good touches and bad touches. We have to start having that conversation early, and then we have to start teaching children the effects of trauma, like bullying, what it does to the brain. So I think education allows us to create this atmosphere where we can say, okay, these things I'm noticing, because a lot of parents, when I did my investigations, there were grooming behaviors that the suspect would actually groom the child, and the parents were seeing it but didn't know they were grooming behaviors. Like they would say, the parent would say, okay, you can't have ice cream before dinner, and the person would say, no, let her have ice cream before dinner. And these things continuously kind of get in the child, or I'm gonna give you this, don't tell mom I'm giving you this, right? Creating that secret environment where we don't talk about it. So then they proceed to the next step, which is the improper touching and the molestation. So when parents realize, some of these people that I'm dealing with, I need to have a little bit more in conversation, intel about these persons rather than bring them in my kid's life. I need to know more. So I think education is the big piece. Another thing, we got to fight our abusive culture.
Yes.
In music, we have these misogynist lyrics. We have artists degrading women. They're talking about killing people, and video games. So movies. So we have to deal with it on that level as well, because our kids are inundated with all this violence. And the word abuse, really, the root word is use, where we get the word utilize from. And so it means utility, purpose, and power. AB is the prefix, which means to kill, steal, or to destroy something. And so you put that together, abuse means to kill, steal, or to destroy someone's purpose, power, or potential. And I often tell people that sounds a lot like scripture, John 10:10, where Jesus says the enemy comes to kill, steal, and to destroy. So that's what abuse does. It destroys someone's potential, their purpose, and their power. So we have to understand that just by me existing, I have a power, and there's boundaries. Right, and we teach kids that from the very beginning, that you respect boundaries.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that's the start.
Good. Good, Kevin. Tell me about your books.
Yes. These are the 5 books that I've authored so far. This is the book really dealing with law enforcement, helping law enforcement, because I found that as a law enforcement officer, we carry guns every day. 100% of the calls that we respond to have some element of abuse in them. However, law enforcement officers are not trained on how to talk to victims. We're trained to interrogate suspects. So as a result of that, a lot of times, a lot of law enforcement officers subconsciously treat victims like suspects.
Wow.
Because we're not trained that a victim is a victim. And we need to understand that, like how you and I are sitting is how you would talk to a victim. But a lot of our law enforcement officers sit in front of a victim in a very confrontational way. We recreate the traumatized situation. Like when most victims are traumatized, they're laying down, and most suspects are standing over them. If I go to the hospital to interview a victim, she's laying down, and I'm standing up. I just recreated that traumatized situation. So the brain starts shutting it down. And so this book is to help law enforcement understand the dynamics of victimology and how to interview victims
Very
and get the
good.
information that they need.
Very
And
good.
then another part of investigation I found as a law enforcement officer, a lot of officers and detectives wouldn't include the family, right? And so what they would do is they would just tell a parent, show up, and they wouldn't tell them the process of the investigation. And so I made a play off the Dummy series, and I put Understanding Child Abuse Investigation for Mummies and Daddies, right? So it breaks it down in its very simplest form from beginning to end, what they can expect if their child is abused.
Nice. That's very good.
Yes. And this one is the talk book. This is the one I talked about having the conversation with young kids and teach them about the body parts. And so that's the talk book. Talk is an acronym for Teach All Little Kids About Abuse book. And you have a police officer, a reporter, and you have a cheerleader. Cheerleader teaches them the parts of the body. The reporter teaches them who to report to, and the officer tells them what's good and bad touches.
That's good.
Yeah. And so these two books, Kevin the Seeker and Kevin the Invisible Little Boy, is basically my story. This is what happened to me, but it's told in a fictional way, and it actually helps victims. It was meant to be read in one quick setting. It motivates victims. You know, the invisible little boy, he wants to be invisible because of what happened to him, but he has to go to the healing forest, and while he's in the healing forest, he meets guilt, shame, anger, but he also meets hope. And hope leads him out.
He did meet
hope. Yeah. And so Kevin the Seeker is the second part of that journey where now he has to find himself. He has to discover himself. So he finds love, he finds anger, he finds shame, he finds all these other things that he has to deal with in order to find himself. So that's why I called it Kevin the Seeker.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So good for you.
Thank you.
Tell the viewing audience where they can connect with you and the 12 Project, how they can support you.
Okay.
Tell them whatever you would like for them to know, Kevin.
Yes, they can go to www.the12project.com and you can get involved. Just let us know that you support us and you want to support us in any type of way. We also have our own clothing line where you can order t-shirts and clothes to show that you support the 12 Project. You can also donate monetarily. You can go to Amazon.com, and these 5 books are available now. And I have 2 more books available coming out later July, A Pocket Full of Stones, and another book I got coming out called Breaking the Deadly Silence.
That's so good, Kevin. Here is what I want you all to know, that there is no level of what you cannot do. When you meet someone like Kevin Mcneil, who has risen above what he shared with us in the first segment of this show, what happened to him as a boy, as a 12-year-old boy, and who rose up out of that dirt that day after he was victimized in such a way, and who went home and shared that with his mother, talked with his mother, and did not have the strength to tell her what really happened to him that day, but somehow made it through by the grace of God, and now is telling his story and sharing his story and helping to change other people's lives with a story that many of us could not even imagine happening to us. That just shows you the strength, the power of the human body, the power of the human mind, the power of the human soul that God has invested in us and is willing to turn around in us each and every day, that we are willing to invest in ourselves. We are game changers, and we can do it. Welcome to the Game Changers family, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
It's my sincere pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today.
Yes, ma'am.
What about this climate that we find ourselves in these last couple of minutes we have on the show? You know, you are nothing near to, I'm sure you've been faced and talked, heard about and asked questions about this climate we're in with the police and the brutality, and we turn on the news every day. What are your comments, your closing comments on that?
I think it goes back to the abuse element. Like everything in our culture, I think that's bad, deals with some form or element of abuse, including law enforcement, abusing their powers, abusing their authority. And when we don't respect people as people, in this whole abusive culture, we treat them like they're other than people. And so that includes law enforcement. So I found out what is happening. People are stereotyped. You know, when I went to the police academy, when they show videos, they showed a lot of faces that look like me that were committing crime. So your brain gets used to those images, and the brain's number one goal is to protect you in whatever environment you find yourself in. So if these images are constantly stuck on me, and then on top of that, some of the images that are portrayed in the media, you know, so law enforcement always get these images of certain people and automatically put them in a category of being dangerous. So any little move seems like I got to beat you to that move. So I'm anticipating danger and violence from particular groups of people. And it's leading law enforcement to act out in ways that's abusive. So I think law enforcement has to be retrained. We have to rethink. We got to have conversations. And we have to, again, prevention and intervent. We have to listen to the public vent and tell us why they don't like being treated the way they are being treated by law enforcement. I think instead law enforcement is trying to control the conversation rather than listening to conversations coming from other people. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Well, I think that we have come to a point of closing today, but we have had that was a part of the question that we received.
Okay.
So you helped me to answer it very well.
Good,
People were asking, I received questions about what I thought around the all of the heightened police brutality and what was happening in the media we turn on the channel, we turn on social media and all of the brutality, and I thought that you would be a good person to bring in on that.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I certainly appreciate you sharing your comments on that, and I certainly agree with you. I think that it's just polarized, and I think that the points that you've brought out, just very, very practical things that we don't even know. Like you said, the training and the education. Police don't know how to talk to victims like victims. They know how to talk to us like we're suspects. And I think that we have to re-examine how to approach one another. And then the pictures in their minds of who we're supposed to suspects.
Yes.
We're not all suspects.
That's true.
Yes. And so we have to be looked at differently. And it's just a reframing, I think. And we can all stand back and reframe each other in our minds of who we're supposed to be and try to love and consider each other differently, I think, all the way around. From us as how we look at the police, and the police how they look at us, and we can all make a difference. Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning in today. Thanks so much for listening. I know you enjoyed this show. Please tell your friends about it. Get it on demand if they didn't get a chance to watch it at the live broadcast. Thank you so much for watching. Until we talk to you and see you again on the next show, please do your very, very best.
Hey travelers, everybody wants cheap airfares, but where can you find them? You call Smart Fares. Our prices are direct from the airlines, and they're so low they're not published anywhere. Smart Fares specializes in cheap flights, discount hotel rooms, cheap car rentals, and great package deals anywhere around the world. Wherever you want to go, Smart Fares can help you get there cheaply and with the best price guarantee. If you want the absolute lowest prices on your airline tickets or other travel services, call us right now. That's right, call. That's the only way to get these low rates. Experts are standing by 24/7 to get you the lowest rates available, so don't wait. Call Smart Fares right now for the best price guaranteed. Save up to 50% off business and first class. We've got great last-minute travel deals too.
Call 800-477-0945. That's 800-477-0945. 800-477-0945.